Hello my dears and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be upcycling some beautiful vintage linens to turn them into a fabulous 1940s summer jumpsuit. All right, my dears, we are back in the sewing room today with some beautiful vintage linens that I managed to pick up from the thrift store for $1.99 for this gorgeous piece here that has some hand embroidery on it, and for this big yellow linen tablecloth that I got for $3.99. So I got them for an absolute steal, and this one is definitely 100% linen, I would say. This one, it feels like a little bit of a blend. When I did a test, it did seem like it was all natural, so I'm guessing it's kind of a linen and cotton blend. I'm not usually a huge fan of yellow for myself. I tend to have a little bit of yellow in my skin tone, and it can make me look ruddy. However, I was thinking if the bottom half of the outfit is yellow and the top half of the outfit is in this lovely linen color, this natural color with this beautiful pink and yellow and orange and green embroidery, that it might be okay and we might be able to get away with it. Now for this pattern, I would like to use Simplicity 1930. And this pattern may look very familiar to some of you who have been with me from the very beginning. And that is because it is this here. These overalls, these Rosie the Riveter Land Girl overalls, are my most noticed, most commented on, most complimented on pieces that I've made. And honestly, they are the thing I wear the most. I wear them in the summer, I wear them in the winter. It doesn't matter. As long as it's not too blazing hot, I've got my overalls on a lot of the times if I'm not wearing one of my dresses. And so I thought, you know, I really want to make another pair of these. Now, this particular one is a mashup pattern that we did. So the bib front, the top of this, is a little bit different than the pattern is actually written. And I'm thinking about doing the same thing again, because while I like this bib front, and I do like the bib front that is included in the pattern, I thought doing a sweetheart neckline on the front might be really, really lovely. Now, I did go through my vintage patterns and I didn't really find a sweetheart neckline that would work for this particular pattern and my idea that I have to go with it. In particular, I found it challenging to find something that fit the bill because many of the sweetheart necklines that I have princess seams running down the front, or they achieve the princess look with a gathering in the front. And I don't want to do that because I want to keep the embroidery on this intact. And I don't want to have a bunch of gathers that are going to make it look muddled. Instead, I'm thinking there's 4 of these flower patches on this tablecloth. And I'm thinking we could do one on each side. And then there are these little ones, which I thought might look really pretty as pockets on the bottom, or maybe like something on the straps. Not really sure about the small ones yet, but I definitely want to use this. Now, this particular linen does have some staining in the center of it, and so I didn't really think it would be perfect for a larger project such as a dress. I had really considered making a really lovely blouse out of it, but again, all of the stains on it seemed like they were really going to show up. So instead, I wanted to choose a pattern, not only that I would get a ton of use out of, because I think a linen overall jumpsuit, dungarees, whatever you call these, I thought it might be really lovely during the summer months. Very breezy, very comfortable and airy and flowy, and yet it would still give me that beautiful vintage look that I could achieve just like I have with these ones. And I really do love, love, love these overalls. So if I do just the top bodice part in these, I can really focus the pattern pieces on top of the really beautiful embroidery and avoid the stained areas. So that is the goal. Because I didn't find a pattern in my stash that had a sweetheart, I think what we're going to do is get the dress form out, and we are probably going to lay some fabric over the top of it and then maybe see if we can't get things to lay really nicely, create a drafted pattern of our own. Very simple. We're not going to be going crazy. And then we can get it cut out of this beautiful linen fabric. I will be backing this as well probably with a light muslin, just to give it a little bit of structure and to make sure it's not see-through for me. And then of course on the trouser portion, I think the other thing I would like to do is, these are beautiful wide leg trousers in this particular pattern, but I was thinking about widening out the top portion as well. And in doing that, I could create a little bit of a gather on the trousers in the front, which would make them even more billowy, more flowy. But again, still trousers, still on the bottom, still covering the legs, still doing all of the wonderful things that overalls do. So without further ado, let's get this pattern back out of the envelope, ironed out, and then let's start drafting up a beautiful bodice top so that we can get these overalls done. All right, my dears, for this bodice, the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and get our darts put in place. I've got them marked, and here I've got them pinned. Once we have all of the darts in both sides of the front portion of the bodice, we're going to iron this, and we're going to iron the darts back toward the waistline. After we get everything nice and flat, then we can stitch up the two front panels together, and from there we can go ahead and attach our facing. So let's get stitching. All right, my dears, we officially have all of the darts placed into the lining material for our top bodice, as well as into our beautiful linen pieces. I've also completely pressed all of those darts back and laid them flat. So we are ready to put these two pieces together. And we are just going to be stitching down this front seam here, leaving the top open so we create that beautiful sweetheart neckline. And then once we've got that put together and pressed out beautiful and flat, we are going to go ahead and put our two pieces, our lining material and our beautiful linen, together, right sides together, and we're going to stitch across the top, over and over, and then we're going to stitch down just one side. The side that we will have our buttons on is going to be stitched in the interior. We are going to flip everything out, press it, and top stitch it. The other side, as well as the bottom, will remain open because both of those sections will be in seams. They will be hidden, and we will be tucking those in and cleaning those up a little bit later. So for now, let's go ahead and get the front seam closed for our linen pieces, and then get our linen pieces attached to their lining. All right, so we've got the front bodice portion for our overalls put together. I even added in a little bit of this lace detail in between the sweetheart to kind of pinch things in and close it up just a little bit. And then of course the straps are going to really help to hold these down. But I think we really maximized getting this beautiful floral stitch work onto the front of the bodice. So we need to move to the back of the bodice. Now this is the original pattern piece for this particular simplicity pattern. So I've got it cut out here. This is just out of some muslin material that I have to line it as well, just like we did with the front. Now when I was drafting this out, I did have this piece on the back so I could kind of line things up. Now one thing that I noticed about this piece, and I noticed it the first time that I made this pattern as well, because I did use this as the original, I did have to trim this back area down, and I had to trim it down significantly. Now for this particular pattern, I didn't go underneath the arms. I cut down close here and then pulled it down. But for this particular modification that we are doing, we are going to be coming under the arms. So I'm not going to be trimming it down quite as far as I did the first time. However, you can see this particular pattern just comes up a little bit high. It's going to come up into my armpits. So I am going to need to trim it down just a little bit. So I'm going to start by trimming this down and then going ahead and putting it onto our beautiful linen so that we can make sure that we're really only cutting out what we need to of the linen and deciding exactly how and where we're going to cut it out and whether or not we're going to try to get a little bit more of that really beautiful embroidery on the back. So let's go ahead and get this pattern piece laid down here. And I think what I may do and what may really work in order to keep the integrity of the pattern is I may simply scoot the pattern down and then continue to trim right along that line so that I know that it's exactly the way it is supposed to be, and I'm not going to get any funky jogs because I have a loose hand. I think if we bring it down like that, we should hopefully be okay. Maybe just a little less, because we will lose a little bit when we stitch our two pieces together. So while I do want to reduce the back height, I'm going to be cutting a little bit off, but then I'm also going to have a seam allowance, flipping that in, so that's also going to lower things down. So I don't want to get too crazy. Easy, easy. Now, let's go ahead and lay out our beautiful linen and see if we can't get this lined up with some of the embroidery. And you know what I think might be sweet, because I think these particular pieces are a little bit too large to fit nicely onto the back. I think it might be sweet to capture just one of these small embroidered flowers. So we'll have the big burst of flowers on the front, and then we'll just have one little peeking out like on the shoulder of the back of the other. So let's get this really nicely lined up here, making sure that our flower is the right side up. or whatever we think is the right side up. And then we can get everything pinned and put together. And I am being careful. I will point this out. I did mention that this does have stains. I did hand wash this after I purchased it, and I did attempt to use a little bit of stain lifter, some baking soda, and Dawn dish soap to gently break up any stains, but there are some right here, and we are luckily avoiding them while we are putting this down. All right, we have our two pieces, our linen and our facing cut out and pinned together. We have our little bit of flower detail on the back. It'll be very cute, I think. So let's go ahead and get this closed up. Now, just like on the front bodice portion, we are going to close up one side. This will be the side that has the button closures. So we'll get that stitched up and then we'll get everything flipped and pressed. All right, my dears. We officially have the front bodice portion done. I did cut out just a couple of quick straps. There wasn't a lot of material left in this particular linen in order to create thicker straps. So I went with what we could do. It's linen on the top, it's the muslin on the bottom, and then I will need to top stitch those still just to make sure that everything stays really nice when it goes through the wash. But this is turning out pretty nicely, I think. We've got our back and then our little flower here and our sides. Now I have not sewn the front to the back yet because I am not sure if I want to sew the entire top together or if I'm going to want to try and put the front bodice onto the front of the slacks and then the back bodice onto the back of the slacks before closing up those long side seams. So for right now, everything is still separate, the straps are still separate, etc. And it is time to officially move on to the trouser portion of our beautiful overalls. Now, the front panel, I did widen the front waistband just a little bit. It's not dramatic, but my hope is that we can get a little bit of gathering across the front, get a little bit of movement here, and then the back is going to require a dart. It is marked into the pattern itself. So we're going to go ahead and get these dots all filled in, get our lines traced, and get the darts into the back of the trousers first. Once we have done that, then we may go ahead and throw the stitches into the front in order to create those gathering lines to see how we like how it's falling. Now, if we get to that, we draw it in, we add some gathers to the front, and it looks terrible. It's okay. This is bigger than the original pattern, which means we can always trim it in and make them fit exactly the same way that these fit if that's what we want to do. So first things first, let's get the dart put into the back and then the gathering put into the front. Okay guys, let's get stitching. Hello my dears and welcome back. It has been a couple of days. Unfortunately, I got a little bit busy at my house, so I've had some time to think about how I am feeling about our jumpsuit here. And what I have decided is that I do like the gathering in the front. I did try some pleats as well. It didn't quite work out. And I like a slightly more dense gather. And as a result, I do think we need to go ahead and add a little fabric to the sides. Now, I was just going to add some fabric, like a little wedge, you can see here, and then use that as the pocket inset. But what I was finding when I kind of pinned it all on and kind of tried a little test fit is it was causing a bit of puckering across the hip area that I didn't really love. So what I would like to do is to just go ahead and add a whole strip, and then yes, I am going to hide the pocket in that area. And I'm going to put a pocket on both sides this time. We may have a little bit of finagling to do with buttons and so forth, but I think it's going to be worth it because I do think it's going to make the entire outfit look really, really nice to have this gathering up here in the front, and it's going to make it very lovely and convenient to have pockets in both sides, which I did get cut out. I also have the strips to go into the sides here. Now the other thing that I did change was when I gave myself a little bit of a test fit to see how the gathering was looking in the front. I did notice that the back was laying really nicely, but the front was kind of pulling up just a little bit. And I thought, gosh, you know, it may end up being just a little bit too tight in the crotch, kind of pulling up, and that's not a comfortable thing for anyone. So I'm going to go ahead and add this little waistband. I am going to just add it in the front because the original pattern does have the back dropping down, kind of with the anticipation that the front panel is longer than the high-waisted portion of the back panel. So we won't even need to edit the back of this in order to accommodate this additional section here underneath this bodice section. So we have quite a bit of work to do. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite as far along as I thought that I was when we went ahead and closed things up before, but sometimes that happens, especially if we're drafting a part of the pattern ourselves. Now, other than those things, I did like how things were fitting. I may choose to nip the sides in just a tiny bit. It did look like it might pucker and gap just a little bit here under the arms, but honestly not bad. You can see even on the mannequin, it really is kind of coming along pretty nicely. However, if we kind of tuck it in just a little bit more, it may pull this up just a little bit. So overall, I'm very happy with how it is looking and how things are going, but we do have a few little things that we're going to want to get taken care of today. All right, we have our side seams put together. We've got our pockets completely inset, so it's time to do this center seam that goes between the legs, the inner leg seam. And we're just going to start at the bottom of one side, go all the way up and over and around and back down the other side. Let's get stitching. All right, my dears, with our trousers completely put together, our pockets inset, it is time to get the bodice put on to the top of the trousers. I have gone ahead and pinned and pinned and pinned and pinned everything into place. So now we need to simply run a couple rows of stitching. Now I think I'm going to do a single row of stitching and then maybe do a quick test fit, make sure everything's okay. And as long as everything is doing well, then I may choose to do either a zigzag stitch or simply go around again with another solid stitch to make sure everything is nice and firmly in place, since the bodice is really holding up these trousers. And this linen tablecloth that we have used is actually pretty sturdy and pretty heavy. So we want to make sure everything continues to stay intact and lay nicely once we have it on and we are out and about on the town wearing our beautiful new jumpsuit. So let's go ahead and get stitching. Now, all right, my dears, let's come in for an update. So I did have everything put together. I had the bodice put on to the trouser section of these really cute overalls. I had my straps tucked in temporarily, and I had everything going on. And I realized a few things. This had come into a fairly deep V-neck, and it was really not fitting well in the bust because of it. It was kind of gaping out, and it was giving a poorly fitted V-neck vibe instead of the romantic sweetheart neckline that I had been hoping for and really dreaming of when I came up with the idea for these really cute overalls. The last thing that I realized I wasn't loving about this outfit were the straps. Now, technically this is appropriate. It was a little bit thin, but it's still appropriate for the time period. And I just didn't think it really looked great here. It looked a little bit thin. It looked a little bit stringy, wasn't really great. And so I did go ahead and pull the fabric off. And I was thinking, what about a little bit of gathering here? And then using the what is left over of the embroidered fabric to make a thicker strap. I did kind of want to save this little bit of detail here to do something else, to do a pocket or a little satchel bag or something like that. But I really think that this needs better straps, and so this particular fabric is better served to go here because we don't have any other fabric that is going to match this for the straps if we don't use this. So I think it will add this little detail of embroidery up over the straps. It'll add a nice wide strap coming up over the shoulders which I think will pair really nicely with this romantic sweetheart neckline that we have here. Then I'm going to keep the gathering in the front of the trousers, but keep the sides and the back nice and flat and smooth for a little bit more elegant look. But yet they'll still have those gathers, so they'll still be really comfortable, nice and big and drapey. So let's go ahead and get the trousers put back into place. Get this beautiful strap finished because this is really just folded over here. So get the strap put together, get it stitched onto the beautiful bodice, and get this project done. I am so excited to get it done because I am very excited to wear it. All right, my dears, let's talk wrap up on this week's make. Trying to use old linens and upcycle them to make a 1940s inspired pair of overalls using a vintage pattern, as well as doing a bit of self-drafting at home. This make was challenging at times. I must admit, I approached it thinking, gosh, I've already done this before. This is going to be a breeze, not a problem. And there were definitely things along the way that made me stop and say, ooh, I'm not so sure I like that. I don't like how that works. The straps didn't turn out the way I wanted the first time around. Even reworking the bodice and reworking where I wanted darts to go in the bodice after I had already drafted out a pattern. All of those things kind of did take on a life of their own and did require a little bit of extra attention. But I do really like the end result. I was not going to use the embroidery on the shoulder straps at first. I was going to save it for another project, and gosh, I'm glad I didn't. I'm almost really glad that the original straps didn't work out because I think having the extra embroidery at the top is just really pretty. So I'm glad that I used it, and I'm not really sure what else I would have used it for, so it's just lovely to have it done. I did line the top of this bodice, and I think that was a smart idea. It gives the linen that the top is made out of a little bit more structure and stability. It ensures that the trouser portion of this is not pulling on this top bodice, which could impact the integrity of the embroidery here at the top. So I think that was really smart. Something I did wrong was when I placed the straps where they were most comfortable, which was smart, but I did not have on a standard bra when I was doing it. And as a result, these straps on the back cut in just a little bit, and I cannot wear a regular bra with this if I want to avoid having the straps seen, which I always do. So I have worn this already around town. I actually took it on vacation with me to wear when I was visiting some family, and I just go without a bra. The wonderful thing is it's lined, so it's comfy. It doesn't really matter that I don't have one on, but if I had wanted one on, I would have to wear a blouse under this or a sweater if I don't want that to show. Now, initially, I did want to be able to use these overalls with a blouse underneath. After I got finished, I did try it on with a couple of my blouses, and I don't really love it. It feels a little bit better the way it is, kind of summery with some straps. And so I think it's going to be mostly a summer wear outfit. If I want it to be worn in the spring or pass into the fall, I think I'll definitely have to wear a little sweater with it in order to get the look that I'm wanting. And I think I would have to probably find a short sweater, something very, very short, because some of my longer sweaters that I tried on with it kind of make everything a bit bulky in the center, since I did choose to do the gathering around this center here. And since the bottom are kind of palazzo pant style, they're very wide. So a wide square sweater that's a little bit longer just makes me look very long and square. So I think if I did want to do that and still kind of maintain a little bit of a figure, I would want a very short sweater, a cropped sweater probably. We'll see how that goes. With that being said, despite the bumps along the way. I love that I added pockets to both sides. Very, very handy. The fact that this is made out of linen, and I think it's a linen blend, but it's definitely got some linen in it, probably linen and cotton. I wore it to Florida to visit family, and it was hot. It was muggy. It was very humid, and I was still very, very comfortable in this outfit. Very comfy. So very happy about that. And I've been happy back here in my mountain state as well, where we are a little bit higher in altitude and quite a bit drier as well. Overall, a ton of fun to make this. I definitely want to keep my eye out when I am at the thrift store for more linens, as I do have more exciting ideas in my head, maybe wanting to do a beautiful dress out of things next time with a nice flowy skirt. So thank you so very much for joining me today. Thank you for joining me on my journey. If you like vintage patterns, sewing, and costumes, please hit that like and subscribe button. I look forward to having you along with me on my journey. Bye, guys.